So I'm Eleni Adamokan, and I am Programs Director at Jigsaw Education Group. And we are absolutely thrilled to be joined today by Dr. Jacqueline Harding. And I'm sure as you'll hear, you're very well aware of how Jacqueline is the leading authority on early childhood development, brain science, and the science of play as well. She's an author, a broadcaster, and a researcher whose work has genuinely shaped how we understand how young children learn and why play isn't just fun, although it is also fun, as we've talked about. It's fundamentally essential to healthy development. And your ability, Jacqueline, to translate complex neuroscience into insights that are immediately meaningful for educators and practitioners makes you one of the most compelling voices in this space. And we are particularly grateful that you're able to make the time for us, given you were just telling us about how many books and TV shows that you're involved with. So yeah, I'm going to stop talking now because no one wants to hear from me. I'll hand over to you, and yeah, really excited for your session. Thank you.
You're so welcome. It's really exciting to be here. I'm always incredibly happy to talk about the brain that loves to play. And we're going to really have a deep dive into what's going on in that incredibly complex organ, the brain, that has this recursive ability, meaning that it can think about itself thinking. And as I said that, you began to think about yourself thinking because you just can't help it. The brain is wired that way. And I promise you that by the end of this session, and this is quite something to say, that your brain and my brain will never be the same again. So, if you thought you were coming to this webinar and it was just going to be about children, you're in for a surprise. We're going to be doing something for our own brains. And that's important. What if I told you that about 98% of 4-year-olds that you come into contact with every day are creative geniuses? Now, is that just my research or is that other people's research? Well, would you believe it? It comes from NASA. So it comes with some credibility here. What happened is that NASA wanted the best brains in the world, like they would, to work with them. And so they devised this test by George Land, and it worked so well that they thought, we'll try it on children. And so they devised a test. This is quite some time ago, but still extremely valid. And they found that this incredible percentage of children were creative geniuses. And that begins to make you think, because by the time the children were 10, it had reduced. And by the time they were about 14, 15, it had gone down to 35%. And by the time they were adults, it had gone down to 2%. Interesting. So you might say to me, what happened? And just imagine how you would feel if you still had that creative ability. Or what would you do if you knew that this creative genius inside the young developing brain is present? Well, what happened? Well, what happened is this, that the education system was designed for an industrialized society. So what did they value? They valued children being able to follow rules. And as that's been perpetuated, and of course it's redundant in today's age and 50 years ago, it's just utterly redundant. And so their brains began to comply with the education system. What a shame. So this ability to be creative and to be able to think outside the box is something we desperately need children to be able to do today. We absolutely need it because of the sort of problems that you and I and others before us have created. And so when you think about how creative children are, in fact, the other day, my next door neighbour had a new trampoline in their garden. And the 4-year-old went out there and I overheard what he said. He was just so full of confidence, full of, wow, this trampoline, what am I going to manage to do? That incredible curiosity and expectation. He turned to his mum and he said, just make sure that my I don't bump my head on the airplanes. Such was his creativity, such was his expectation. And that's what we need. And in fact, my own son, I remember when he was 7 years of age, and this is to my shame, I remember him saying to me, Mum, 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 test me on my spellings. And then I said, yes, fine, let's do it now. And he said, no, can't do it yet. I haven't forgotten them. And I thought, oh, so you're beginning to see education as something of a failure. And so that was the beginning of my road of thinking about cognition. And if you think about play, because this is the way that the brain is designed to learn, and you think about cognition, they are inextricably linked. And any constant deviation from this incredible plan does no good whatsoever. So off I went on this task of thinking about the brain and doing lots of qualifications, way too many qualifications for my own good. And yes, we know that the brain is a sponge, but do we really know how it reacts to the senses? And that's what you're going to find out. And you're going to find out how to maximize your brain in order to maximize others as well. So my research has been alongside medical doctors, and I'm going to tell you a funny story later about how I dragged a medical doctor into some research with me. He was terrified of children, absolutely terrified. It was ridiculous. And I've worked with Sony, I've worked with all broadcasters and Fisher Price, and I'll be able to tell you all about that research. Obviously, I can only just dip into these bits, but really what I want you to know is this is evidence-based, which is really important to jigsaw education, as I know, that we say things that are evidence-based and that we really ensure that they become practical. So it's no good me using all these massive big words about neurophysiology. Who cares about the names? What we care about is the impact on children. And I believe, and as I go around the world speaking, I do believe that people can understand this. And it's really up to people like me to make sure that we understand. So what have I got? If you could see my room, I've got lots of toys here and Christmas decorations to help me explain it and to help us really understand it. Because the brain lights up when it plays. And this is the prefrontal cortex, which does all the heavy lifting. And what happens when children play, it involves the whole neocortex. And it kind of metaphorically lights up, it becomes interested. And when we become playful and when we become curious, and like meerkats, we sit up and we see the world in a more curious way, then we begin to resonate at a higher frequency in life. Now, that's not spooky stuff. This is electrical and chemical science that underpins all this. So where do we start? Well, we have to start at the beginning. And I believe, and at Bright Start, we talk about if you change the beginning, you change the whole story. And this is what we need to do. And when we think about the beginning, if you see the little baby there on your screen, and that's how the brain, the neurons are there. In fact, 128 billion neurons a baby is born with, and that's about as many stars as there are in the Milky Way. Fantastic, you think. Great, got the neurons. Aha, but it doesn't stop there. They need to be joined up. And this is what happens. you've got all of those neurons, but they all need to be joined up. So you might say to me, okay, Jacqueline, well, how did they get joined up? Like you can see in the middle, it becomes more dense. And by the time the child's 14, an interesting thing is happening. So some are pruned off, and the ones that they need to keep, so it becomes more organized and more connected. That's what we want with little brains, is for them to become more connected. So every thought and every action has a resulting action in the brain and through the body. And here is one of my most favorite little toys that shows you just how chemical and electrical signals work. Now notice that it is my touch that really stimulates it. Bear that in mind, as something else I'm going to tell you later on is incredibly important. Keep that image in mind just for a moment, and then I'll tell you something really quite mind boggling. In fact, let's tell you another mind boggling thing. And here's the only big word I'm going to use, and it's neurogenesis. And you probably know it anyway. It just means the birth of new neurons and the the connection, so that we have this wonderful flexibility. And the flexibility and the joining up is incredibly important. And did you know that when you woke up this morning, that although the number is slightly disputed, but you were given new neurons even this morning? Now, some people say 700, some people say less, some researchers say more, but there is now no excuse for us all to become dull and to become less creative. Because as we wake up in the morning, as you know that you were given some new neurons and that you have this ability still to connect them up, neuroplasticity, that you take that into the workplace, you take that into your families, and you realize that your child and the children around you are still developing. Now, once you've seen this, you will never, ever forget. Let me just take a drink of water. This is a neuron actually connecting. Watch this. Here it goes. Here it goes. Thinking about it. Oh, maybe it's learning about colors. Oh, that's blue. Oh, yes, blue. Right, I've got to remember this object is blue. Oh, here I am. I'm connecting up. Boom, there it goes. And once you've seen that, you'll never be able to forget. So every learning, every action is a chemical and electrical signal. And so we are, in a sense, like electricians for little ones' brains. How exciting that is when you see that you can really ignite the brain in the most happy, fun, playful way. Now, the brain is an expensive organ. What do I mean by that? Well, when you're a child, almost half the calories that you consume, just under half calories, go into that organ. And it spends most of its time predicting. It is a predicting organ. It's trying to work out what's going to come next. Is this person safe? Might this happen? And your brain does that all the time. You are trying to predict, perhaps, how long is Jacqueline going to speak for? She sounds like she could speak all day. Oh my goodness. So you are predicting and using your calories up as well. Now, how does this work? Well, it's activated or deactivated by sensory input. So the more we're able to help it predict for the good and not for negativity, and we're able to help it predict good outcomes, the happier the brain and body become. Let me show you something, okay? Now, you can test yourself with your prediction skills. Right now, as you look at this image, you are predicting what this is. And you might be thinking, it could be, well, she talks about science a lot, so it could be an MRI scan. She also talks about molecules and neuroplasticity, so maybe it's something to do with that. But she also did something, for those of you who are super alert, she also did something that you might have noticed. I had a drink of water, and that may have helped your brain predict what was going to happen. So it shows that also that the more we do things, the repetition, the brain loves repetition, and the more security and the more love and the more care a child receives, and the more playful and creative the education becomes, the brain begins to expect playfulness. It begins to expect good things. It begins to expect safety. And this is exactly what little ones need. So if I said to you, twinkle, twinkle, you'd go, little star, well, I hope. Or once upon a time, and off you'd go. Let's just prove this one more time. Take a look at this. And what do you think? Oh, so it wasn't quite what you thought. So, in order for the brain to predict good things, it needs a lot of reassurance. Now, remember what I showed you with that little dome? Watch this baby, very little baby, been in hospital a lot, very, very unwell baby. Mummy took him next door to meet the neighbour. Now just watch what happens. This is serve in return at its best.
No, no, because it hurts. Yes, it hurts. You cry. And mommy said, what happened? And papi said, what are you doing? You cry and cry. Yes, don't eat. No. That Alfred, no. Mommy, give me food. Mommy, give me food. Oh, really? Oh, ¿a poco? You so liar. Yes, I know you. You so liar. Yes. You alarm the people, but you okay. Yes. Yes. Uh-huh. 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 What happened? Are you in trouble?
Absolutely amazing. And don't tell me that that child was not reacting to that adult and unable to communicate. He totally communicated. And when you think about how those electrical and chemical signals, it was as though she was touching his brain. She was an electrician. I find that deeply moving. And she's telling the little baby, all is safe. I mean, she's saying it with her words, but she's saying it with her eyes. She's saying it with her soothing. Her body language and her micro and macro expressions are saying all is well. And now the interesting thing is what's going on in the adult's brain. The adult receives as much as the baby. Oh, did you really say that, Jacqueline? I really did say that. It looks like this. So this is a mother and a baby in an MRI scan, and you can see the parts of the brain that are lighting up that are identical in the baby's brain. So this is science in action. So the baby receives and the adult receives. So that's all the oxytocin happening there. And it's present for the baby and the child. There's a massive burst in chemical and electrical signals around that stage where they're learning at an extraordinary rate. That's 1 million new neural connections every second. How mad is that? So every moment is communicating to the baby and to the child. You're important. I'm spending time with you. Listen to my heartbeat. It's deeply important the way that babies and children react. And would you believe, too, more of my toys coming out here. So if this is your brain and this is my brain, I promised you that our brains, although I can't really see you very well and I'm doing all the talking, but even so, our brains are connecting and they are kind of communicating messages to each other. And this is where humanity becomes really important. It's called neural coupling. And it's this reciprocal responsiveness, meaning I give, you take, you give, I take, blah, blah, blah. And on it goes, giving those signals which build through fun and playfulness, not through rote learning, not through rote learning, but through repetition of playful behaviors, because it's an important brain network that is shared between us. And those little bonds between the parent and carer reconfigure not just the child, but the adult's brain as well. So when you're playing with children and you're interested in them, and this is something that I was very privileged to conduct some research for Fisher Price. They said to me, look, Jacqueline, we know quite a bit about how play is good for children. What we don't know is what play does for adults. And they said, would you do this research? I thought, you bet. So I nearly bit their hand off. I said, absolutely, I'll do this. And here, I mean, it's a long, long story, but let me show you the result of what I found. I called it playful triangulation. Now, this is an older child, a sibling, and it forms a triangle when you have eye gaze, you have shared attention on something, you have close proximity, doesn't have to be an object. It could be, well, it could be a plaything, it could be imagination, it could be a toy, it could be, so they weren't asking me just to research toys, but they were asking me to look at what goes on for an adult when we play. A lot is the answer, a lot. When you engage in the play, it signals to your brain, well, life's good, isn't it? Yeah, life's pretty good. And that's why I feel great when I go and play with children. And we forget the teaching and we remember the play. And we get into that playful triangulation. And let's see the proof of what I mean by this. This is from, I conducted my own, what's called a still face experiment. What happens if adults are disinterested? This is a lovely dad who's really jolly and really interactive with his child. But I said to him, give him a bit of interaction and then stop. How mean I am. But anyway, he was up for it. Take a look at what happens. He now tries to make Dad do it again. He's slightly disturbed by that still face, that lack of interaction that he's used to. He's actually trying to make Dad do what he would normally do. And yet he perseveres. But soon he would give up. There you are. And he gives up. So it shows how interactive, how playful we need to become as adults. Now, let's take a look at imagination. When we look at imagination, did you know the imagination, and when children role play, the science of role play is astounding. Time for more Christmas decorations. Okay, so imagination actually turns genes on or off at a cellular level, on or off at a cellular level, which then has a cascading effect all the way through the body. Did she really say that? Yes, she said that. That imagination turns genes on or off at a cellular level. So are you saying that it's really important? Yes, I'm saying that children engaging in imaginative and creative activities sparks the brain. And it does it good, it feels good, it's chemically good, it's electrically good for it. Let me prove it to you, just in case you're sitting there going, aha, is she right? Okay, so this was Pascal Lyon's experiment. And he decided that he would have, it's called the five-finger experiment. And he decided that the first group at the top would do physical exercise, 10 minutes every day, actually practicing piano up and down the scales. Now the next lot of people were allowed to only practice playing the piano in their heads. So thinking about it. And the control group, never be in a control group, by the way, because you get to do nothing. So in the control group, they did nothing. Look what happened at the end of day 5. How little difference there is between physical practice and mental practice. So this was a particular electrode that was put on the brain to see how it had developed. So imagination and allowing children to play in an imaginative fashion is so critical to their well-being and to their brain development. What is play poverty? Well, quite simply, it's play, it's life without play. So you might say to me, well, what is the opposite of play? Is it work? No, it's depression. The opposite of play is depression. And I had a child in my school. She was, this is some time ago, and she was only 5. She'd come into reception, and she was not interested in looking at words, looking at anything. All she wanted to do was to go off to the role play corner and play just at being at home and doing laundry and stuff. And in the end, I found out that she was a young carer for her mother who was disabled. So I abandoned the whole curriculum, and she was just given the role play and any play materials she needed, not just for a few weeks, but for as long as she needed. And that went on for months and months and months. So she had to make up for the poverty of play. Then she was fine, absolutely fine. She went on, and none of the other children bothered in the least. They do kind of understand, there's no doubt about that. Now, another piece of research I was really privileged to conduct in creative well-being. This is when I carted my friend who was a medical doctor and scientist. In fact, he was just such a brilliant guy that he was part of the team that worked on the first MRI scan. So it was quite an intellectual. Anyway, so I carted him off into two very deprived areas, two schools where, quite honestly, the children didn't even know where to go to the toilet, so they went up into the toilet in the playground. Anyway, these two head teachers were really up for changing the whole curriculum into a creative process. And there'd been such kind of absenteeism at the school. Children didn't want to come to school, and neither did the teachers, to be honest. And the parents weren't that keen. And so we worked on it for nearly, I think it was over a year actually. And we set up two cameras. We took two artists into the classroom and we converted it all into a creative experience. Oh my gosh. Anyway, let's just hear Sanjay talking about it.
We've been looking at creativity from some different points of view. Firstly, we're looking at creativity from the point of view of the body and the perspective of human health. We're looking at creativity from the perspective of neurophysiology, which is the way in which the brain and nervous system interact with creativity. What we and other researchers are seeing is that creativity has this beneficial effect in relationship to children's stress and to their physical, emotional, and mental well-being.
Here we're going to see an example of a child during the preparation, leap and landing stage. Here's Paige as she gathers together her materials. We can see the seriousness on her face, her quick, purposeful body movements indicating the surge of energy she feels about her project. She moves around the room seeking out the materials she needs for her model. We can see the focused concentration, and she's scoring highly on the child involvement scale. Paige's relaxed body frame and mouth shows deep concentration and involvement at the start of this creative experience. Now she begins to enter the leap stage, where there are breakthroughs, realizations, ahas, revelations. Paige is normally quite pale and sometimes distracted, is now becoming focused and deliberate in her actions. Her greater skin profusion, the facial flushing, shows just how it alters her biological state. At this stage, for the landing, where an enormous amount of energy is released, Paige wishes to share with her friend and with her teacher, celebrating her success. The human nervous system seems to reward itself for gaining that deeper understanding of reality.
Absolutely amazing. And here we can see the 10 E's of creativity. What happens, the enthusiasm, the eagerness, the expression, and then you get the eureka moment. Remember how many children are creative at 4, and we need to keep them in that space. And this is where the brain waves can alter. And what we really want is this incredible alpha state where they're able. So these different states represent how we behave in different states, and when we're sleeping and when we're awake and when we are at our optimum. And here we can see the observable changes that we identified, that displays of excitement, the heightened reaction time, the skin pallor, they are observable. And all of you will have recognized this in children and in yourself when you're in that creative state and when you are at your peak performance and when everything feels good. And what happens is that it's rather like this. So when you're in this sort of state, a lantern effect, you're able to really be creative and it inhibits the kind of repetitive, habitual thinking that we can often get into, which is much more sort of laser focused. And what children will do is go into that lantern focus that gives them the breadth of understanding in those eureka moments and finding solutions. Take a look at these children when a frog appears and notice the wonderful reaction from the teacher. How she reacts is really important.
Maybe it's one of the frogs that we had last year. That was a tadpole.
Oh, just like a frog.
Before it becomes a frog, it's a tadpole, and then it's a
Oh,
froglet. Well done. Yes, a froglet. And then after it's a froglet, it becomes a
ginormous frog.
ginormous frog.
Like that one.
Like that one there.
That must be one of our frogs because I don't think a different frog would come to us if it wasn't ours.
That makes a lot of sense.
I remember when we found one next to the shore.
Sorry? Well, Dexter is saying something very important. Yes, Dexter?
There might be a squirrel at my house.
Oh, I see.
There might be a frog.
Uh-huh.
This frog is different.
This frog is different.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Is it moving again?
Really?
Yes.
Guys, be quiet for a second. Do you know what I think? Do you know? I think it came in this pool because a bird was chasing it.
Absolutely fantastic. And when we ask the question, what's going on in the child's brain and what's going on in the adult's brain, the adult was completely immersed in the experience. The adult gave space for the children to be creative and importance. She placed importance on what each child said. And so they were able to think out of the box, to have that lantern thinking, and to be, you can almost tell by the way that they move their shoulders back and their heads up, and they're looking bright and alert. And you can see how the brain is playing. And in that way, the child becomes open to new experiences and also affects the adult's brain as well. So how does that happen? That happens through the senses. So, and inside the brain, so from outside, it would all look calm and maybe like nothing's going on. But inside, all of those ideas collide and there's chaos and there's moments aha and beginning to crash together. And then out of that becomes a new thought. And remember how we saw how those neurons connected up, that synapses happened, that connection, that aha moment, the realization. It comes through the senses, through smell, through taste, through being outside, through human connection, which is what it's all about. And that human connection allows them to come up with their very best ideas. And I remember the other day, actually it was last week, this dad told me about his, I think she was a little bit older, I think she was 5, and she wanted a cat. She kept saying, Dad, I want a cat, I want a cat. And he said, you know, I can't have a cat inside the house because I have allergies. It makes me, you know, cats make me sneeze. And she said, don't worry, Dad, you can sleep outside. They will come up with solutions. Trust them. And the playfulness and the ability to do that. I don't think we've quite got time to see that one. But that's also one where they're using magnifying glasses and they're able to explore the land. And how keen am I on the outdoors? 100%. And some of the new books that I've got coming out, some of the children's books I've got coming out are set outside. And why have I done that? Because I know that the outdoors gives them all that sensory input that they need. I'll show you some of the new books that I've got coming out in a minute. So why does curiosity feed the young brain? We haven't really got time to do this, but let me just think around this for the moment. Curiosity is as though it's sort of feeding the brain because it, rather than damping it down with, I've got the answers, you are just the recipient, it turns it on its head, like you saw with the children and the frog. It's turning it on its head. It's allowing the child to think through possibility. So it's possibility thinking that drives curiosity, that drives the brain to kind of metaphorically wake up. And we need to do that for ourselves as well. Metaphorically speaking, we need to use our new neurons that we're given every day. And I suggest that you do things like, oh, this could be dangerous. Hey, let's give it a go. One of the things that I like to do that really challenges me is I dance every evening for my exercise. I'm useless, trust me. I mean, I've got hardly any inhibitions, but if you could see me, I mean, I look like some twit, I tell you. But I know that it also wakes my brain up. So I get a bit of physical exercise and I dance backwards as well, making sure there's nothing behind me, of course. And have I ever fallen over? Yes, of course I have. But it actually does my brain good. And I also do juggling badly. There we are. Not too bad, and I didn't break anything. So I would challenge you to feed your brain for the sake of your children and for the sake of the children that you come into contact with, because it'll actually do them good. And not only does that do it good, but Dr. Chowdhury also mentioned the word psychoneuroimmunology, one heck of a long word. All of that means is that how can we protect our brains and those of little children's brains? What we do is we offer them play. Oh my gosh, could it really be that simple? Let me tell you something else. Now, the brain does tend to get a little bit overwhelmed by this thing. This is my least favorite piece of anatomy or bit in the brain called the amygdala. And it's only that big, it's the size of an almond. And it tends to get overwhelmed. And it's a bit like this, it goes into panic. And you can feel it, and you can feel how that feels when a child is in overwhelm by maybe not having enough time, not enough time outside. And then another thing happens, and the friend comes over to them, they're feeling in complete overwhelm, they haven't had enough play, and the last thing, boom, they are completely overwhelmed. So how can we protect little brains? Simply through play, because the brain is Teflon for, let me show you this one first. So if somebody says something really good to you, it's great, yeah. We could rather be a little bit like Teflon for the good, it bounces off, and we're rather like Velcro for the bad. So the bad things that happen, it's like, oh, why so stupid? Why can't you do this? And and we remember just one negative thing. Let's, for example, you had the opportunity to say something about this webinar. You said, "Oh, Jacqueline, we enjoyed the pictures, we enjoyed the videos, but your toys, they were a bit much." Guess what I would remember? I would remember the toys were a bit much. And that would be the Velcro for the bag. And all little brains are like that. So they need a heck of a lot of reassurance and human connection and eye-to-eye content. Otherwise, it bounces off. And play has this unique function to enable us to calm down. And that is, in technical terms, it's called the parasympathetic nervous system. And the word there, sympathetic, gives you a bit of a clue, doesn't it? The parasympathetic nervous system comes alongside and goes, he's going to be okay. And that's what play does to the child's brain and heart. Goes, it's okay. So how can we possibly deny that children need play? This little boy, anyway, that's biological opposites here, creativity or stress, or these are the different ways that it occurs. But let me just show you this. So this little boy, this was taken during COVID time. He'd got COVID and wasn't doing very well. And mum, she just is a playful mum. And she showed him the ice machine. Watch what happens. And so nobody is saying that humor or play actually heals in any way. We haven't got the evidence for that, but we do know that it does something quite spectacular within the nervous system. So I was just so compelled by all of this, so interested that my next book, I mean, the one that's out at the moment is called The Brain That Loves to Play. My next one that's coming out in a couple of months' time is The Brain that loves to laugh, and it's about human connection, because I became fascinated by it. So if you're interested, you'll be able to see this. So what am I saying? In essence, I'm saying that really for all of us to help children develop brains with huge potential, that we need to allow them to play, to invest in play, avoid play poverty, and you will see them take the biggest leap they possibly can in life. And I just promised you, this is the one that's out at the moment, and this is the next one. I tell you, I've had such a laugh. I've been all over the world drawing on sense of humour from other neuroscientists, and from play researchers, from parents, from children. I've just had the most amazing time. And these are the little books that I've written that, as you can see, are all based on the outdoor environment. But the thing I want you to remember is not about my books. I want you to remember that you have those neurons that are able to propel you into a space that's able to feed little brains, because we are all electricians. Thank you so much. I think yes, I've stuck to the time. I'm happy with my little self.
You very much so, because I also took a couple of minutes at the start, I think. So you've, yeah, absolutely nailed it. Thank you so, so much. That was, wow, so full and rich of, yeah, so many takeaways, I'm sure, for everybody. I feel like I need to go back and watch it again, and I'll take on even more. It was just, yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. I can't see any questions in the chat. Naomi's just said thank you so much, though. So if anyone does have any questions, please do pop them in there. I guess I would just, if no one else has any questions, I would have just one to finish us off the session. you kind of just talked to there in that image about the fish, and if there was like one thing that the people joining us today could do differently tomorrow, like one small shift in how they think about or make space for play, like what would it be?
I would start with yourself because because I showed you how our brains connect. So the more playful you are, I mean, you don't have to become a comedian overnight or anything, but just do things differently. So if you have a routine, routines are great. I love routines. But sometimes we have to change things up so that we go from that kind of very focused way of thinking into a different way of thinking. So we have this kind of lantern focus. So I would say find a hobby, start a new craft, and you will find the difference. You'll be amazed at the difference. You don't have to be very good at it. I mean, trust me, I'm rubbish at dancing. And I even try painting, rubbish at painting, but it's my painting and it's my mark and it means something to me. And you'll get far more into the way that children think. So, my biggest tip is not do this or listen to children. We all know that. We all know that. Make space and all of these things. But it's who you are as a person. And this is what I found over the last 2 years with my research with human connection. It is who you are. It's not a mechanism, it's not reading a manual. It's about being authentic and about being playful and having wide eyes and being a bit of a meerkat. And who you are will encourage other children and people around you to be who they are as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're just making me want to, yeah, get home to my own children and just be like, like, look at, have that real moment of connection, because I know we can all be, and it's true in our jobs, in our work, with the children that we work with as well, but also at home, like we're on a constant hamster wheel, aren't we? Of kind of like you say, there's the routine and there's like all the things you've got to get done, and just in yeah, like you're saying, investing in that for yourself as well, because of what you can benefit from, and recognizing that there's real value in that time spent playing, which sometimes we can say, I don't mean playing, but I mean like sometimes it can be dismissed, right? Play as, oh, we're just playing, or we're just, like there's not the value in it. So I think you've really, really, really highlighted that today. So thank you very, very much. You've got a few more comments in the chat as well, just saying thank you. That was great. Found that really interesting and useful. So
Oh,
yeah, fabulous. Thank you so much, everyone. Yes, you can absolutely access the recording, and it'll be shared with you via email after this. It will also then be available on our website as well, open access for anyone. So whether you're in a jigsaw school or not, yeah, anybody will be able to access that there. But you will get that. Probably now it will arrive in your inbox tomorrow, I would think, looking at Jessie will be the wonderful person that helps us with that. So yeah, fabulous. Thank you all so much for joining, and yeah, we will see you all in a webinar soon, I hope. And thank you so much again, Jacqueline.
you're welcome and go and be playful.
I love it.